When I gave the title to whoever I gave the title to, I actually said the talk was called The Power of Imagination. And when I heard miracle, it really is a miracle, isn't it? I mean, all of our 12 powers are kind of our spiritual miracles given to us by God. So yeah, imagination. Let's just get started with a definition, like I like to do. And this is from The 12 Powers of Man, Charles Fillmore. He says, when the faculties of the mind are understood in their threefold relation, spirit, soul, and body, it will be found that every form and shape originated in the imagination. It is through the imagination that the formless takes form. Okay, and we probably all have heard those words before. And I think of our 12 powers like superpowers, and we celebrate one every month, and of course this is June, so in June we celebrate imagination. And if you're a spiritual person or anybody who believes in a power greater than yourself that you can't see, you're using your imagination right there. Faith in anything requires us to use our imagination because we want to visualize the things that we want to see in our reality. And whether it's something we want to see in our physical reality or something that we want to see, in our consciousness change, rise, either way, we use our imagination to create these pictures that we live. I'm going to apologize just for a second. I have brand new glasses on that I thought were perfect. They are not perfect at all. Driving here was fine. So you might see my papers, so that's all good. All right. So when we talk about the definition of imagination in the dictionary, they talk about forming mental images of things that aren't present to our five senses. It's the ability of the mind to build mental scenes or events that do not exist, are not present, and have not necessarily been present in the past. It kind of makes it sound like it's this magical, mystical thing, when in reality, faith and imagination going hand in hand are just so natural. The Apostle Paul, who was really Jesus' biggest fan when he was writing his letter to the Corinthians, he tells the people to fix their eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So the things that we're seeing in the spiritual world, they're here, but they're not going to last, right? Our mental images, the things that we create in our minds, in our hearts, with spirit, that's eternal. Our creative thoughts, our imaginations, are what create our physical reality. The third unity principle teaches us this, right? Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Okay, so we know that what we think on grows. And if we think about it enough, in a positive way or a negative way, it eventually will pop up in our life somewhere. Most of you are familiar with the unity saying, and if anybody knows who said it, I don't remember, to see it right, set it right. Does anybody remember who said that? Well, anyway, it's true. To use our imaginations productively and in a more spiritual way, we want to become aware of these pictures in our heads. The movies that we're repeatedly seeing, because we all have habitual thoughts. We just do. You can't turn it off. But are these thoughts productive? Are they useful? Are they damaging or even self-deprecating types of thoughts? So we always have both kinds going on in our heads. So I'm inviting us, if we're not already as we go forward, to just be more observant of the type of pictures that we form. Like, what is our go-to button? When we see something and we have an instant mental reaction of some kind, a picture, do we usually jump positive? Do we usually jump to the negative? It's either or. Like, what do we do and start to notice? Are we usually more in attack mode and we start thinking of how am I going to get back or whatever, or are we more positive? So it's with the power of imagination that people create. Architects design buildings, scientists discover theories, chefs come up with new creations, which is so popular now. Everybody loves to watch people cooking. I love watching it because it's just never going to happen. It's like, look at this. It is magic to me. But anyway, to make these creations, it's imagination. But it's also our imagination that sometimes is fueled by our fear and fueled by our anxiety. And when that happens, we start to stress ourselves out. We start to let the ego kind of run amok, in our heads, this monkey mind, thinking and talking and thinking and talking. So again, how are we using ours? Can we start to take a look at that? So I was thinking of some relatable examples of stories that we tell ourselves. I think they're pretty common. Have you ever not wanted to go someplace? You dreaded it. You don't want to go because when you went 100 years ago, it was a bad scene. It was just, it wasn't right. The vibe wasn't there. Are you the kind of person that, it's at the same building that party was years ago, but you don't even think about it. You go into situations, they're new. We're not bringing the past in. Judging people in the present for who you knew them to be in the past. Okay? That's, our imagination is going. Even though what we see in front of us is a different version of that person, sometimes it's hard to get that mental image to change. Or we can go into any situation and say, everybody deserves a second chance, So, I was thinking about my own public speaking. I was going to say this like a story, but it really is me. I was going to say something like, do you ever, before you're going to talk to a group of people, are you all relaxed? Everything's going to go well? Or are you envisioning forgetting your notes on the desk at home? Do you set like many alarms because you're thinking, I'm going to wake up and it's going to be 10:15 and this is a mess? And then I thought, that's me. That's not an example. That's me. But it's funny that after I've been up here since 2002 on occasion, sometimes a lot, and I still, I have, and nothing bad has ever happened in any talk I've given anywhere. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but that's a story for another day. So these kind of things are pictures that, movies that we're creating, stories we are creating on the screens in our minds. Excuse me. So Aristotle coined the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum. This phrase expresses the idea that unfilled spaces go against the law of nature and physics, and that every space needs to be filled with something. So it seems that our minds, they don't like to be vacuums either, do they? When there is an unknown ahead of us, and we can't picture it, we fill that unknown with some sort of picture. If you're going to meet somebody at a restaurant, you're kind of nervous, you haven't met them before, what's it going to be like, and and you're thinking of yourself. Maybe this is just me who, but you're thinking of meeting the person, going in, and what it might be, and you get there, and it's so absolutely different, from what you thought, but it's useful. Our imagination, it just gives us something to go on sometimes, even if it ends up not being anything like that. So what we're doing, it's natural to form these pictures and all of these events with meetings coming up and stuff, and that's what I was saying about when we meet new people, trying to get a vision in our heads, usually based on a voice of what the person looks like, which is kind of a different way to use your imagination. Like, okay, I can hear this, so this person must look like that. And it's happened to me when I read a book. When you're reading a book, and hopefully I don't like it when they put a picture, because now that's what I'm going to think the person looks like that I'm reading about. But then a movie comes out, and you're like, okay, they had the same description as I had in the book, but they're portraying it like so differently, So, let's see. Our imagination, these thoughts, these mental images we have, it makes the world a lot more fun and interesting because the images are ever changing. We can change these images. And it's through prayer and meditation that we teach and train our minds to instinctively fill the unknown spaces in consciousness with positive things, instead of fear-based pictures that are always based on the past. The goal is connect to the universe, staying awake and alert and alive to this moment, and start to have the go-to button in our brain when we see something. It's going to start to see the good there. That will be our automatic. And the imagination, if we didn't have an imagination, we couldn't communicate with one another. In any given conversation, our words are describing something that we've seen before, and it takes imagination to sometimes try to describe something to somebody. I was trying to say to somebody where I was caught in a flash flood last week, and I'm like, I was on south, on Rochester going south, and it was right by that Sunoco that's on the other side of the street, near Woodward. I don't know if you can picture it or not, but that's what we do. So now you're taking in my information and you're creating this picture. And unless we're standing in front of it, chances are our pictures are going to be a little different. So that's why I think it's fun, but it can take you also, gossip in that telephone game of retelling a story. That all goes through the filter of imagination. The more degrees of separation you put between this person's description and that person's description, the less accurate this description is ultimately going to be at the end. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not like, in school maybe you purposely changed it as you went along. But it's not like we're purposely doing that. It's just whatever we see or hear is going to go through the filter of our personality and our individuality. So imagination is how we communicate with one another. But more importantly, it is how we communicate with divine and how God communicates with us. And I'm going to touch just on one of these ways. It's through dreams. When I was researching this, I found out that there are at least 20 dreams mentioned in Scripture. I never really thought much about it. We know that Jacob, right, he sees this ladder in a dream that's going up to heaven, and he sees these angels who are, messengers of God going up and down this thing. And, so through this dream, he realizes that God is everywhere, everywhere equally present and accessible to him. It's more than that, but it's that. Joseph has these dreams that he's going to, rule the land. He's going to rule over everybody, and he ends up doing that. But he also becomes like this professional interpreter. He becomes an interpreter to kings and prophets and their dreams. So, Danielle. I really didn't know this until I read it either. Daniel was also somebody who interpreted dreams. So stay tuned later for a lesson about dreams in the Bible, because I think that sounds kind of good. But not everybody in Scripture agreed with that. If you look at the book of Peter, he says, we need not seek after dreams to hear from God. The written word of God, provided through the agency of the apostles and prophets, is our rule for faith and practice. But what I read there is we have the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. So, dreams, do you think God communicates to you through dreams? Has it ever happened to you that you can think of a dream that was a message? I think it's possible, because if God is everywhere equally present, God is with us when we're asleep or when we're awake. So I think the guidance is there, despite my lack of dream theory knowledge. I'm not suggesting that they carry spiritual significance or they don't. Some of our dreams are pretty interesting. But yeah, I think we've all had dreams that have either told us something or reminded us of something or affirmed something for us. And I think that's valid. So, a lot of times we see big stuff. We think of imagination, and it always seems to be about somebody who created something huge that we can see. So we'll see a great work of art, or we read a great author and we think, wow, he had a really good imagination. I wish I had that kind of imagination. And the fact is that you do. You have an equal, infinite amount of imagination, because going back to the beginning, imagination is a spiritual power that God gave us by grace. Didn't have to do anything for it. You've got it. So all you want to do is you want to draw this power out of yourself, this power of imagination. You want to, you use your spiritual practices to draw out this power within yourself. Just because you don't think of yourself as an artist, it doesn't mean that you aren't one. It doesn't mean that you don't have imagination. As we've already heard, imagination is filtering through really everything we do. Every thought pretty much becomes a picture, it seems. Let's see. Okay. So I've got Paul back here again because I love Paul. Paul was telling us, again, he was telling the Corinthians, which is now us. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen from me, put in practice, and God of peace will be with you. So what he's doing is he's encouraging people who are suffering with negative thoughts or negative situations, and he's kind of encouraging them, think positively. He's telling them to think about things, noble things, true things, beautiful things. So he's asking us, change this terrible imagery that you sometimes have in your mind from a negative to positive. He wants them to imagine something better. Regardless of what you see with your physical eyes, what can you see that's beautiful? What can you imagine? What can you envision in your head? All right. There are a couple of unity principles in that little section. Again, we're reminded of thoughts manifest in the real world. He's telling us to think such things and we will find our peace. Okay. And also the fifth unity principle, which says that we have to put into practice this stuff that we know. We can know about our imagination, we can know the Bible backward and forward, all the unity stuff. You don't put it into practice, it's not going to do much for you. I think you know that the screen in your mind is never blank. Okay, so like right now, just like right now, close your eyes. Try to be as blank as you can, and I'm going to say something. I'm going to say red car. Okay, so open your eyes. Did everybody think of a red car? Please tell me you did, because probably you did. We hear something and we form a picture. It's actually kind of cool. Okay. So another way we can encourage our imaginations, a way to bring out the positive here, is again, like I said, being more aware. What is going on in my head? When I stop and it's something negative, just take that one breath, what's going on here? Become aware. We don't want to start fighting the things we see in our head. We don't want to blame ourselves for, PTSD is a very real thing. Things that we see, sometimes we just don't, you don't want to fight them, you want to roll with them, or you address them. So you can't turn it off, you can't turn the thoughts off, you can't turn your imagination off, but you can use it to, at least in a crummy situation, try to say to yourself, field of daisies. It sounds very silly, but we can bring to mind anything that we want in any situation. Okay, I completely went off of anything. Another thing that we do, bringing out our spiritual creativity, our imagination. Have you ever done a vision board? Has anybody ever done a vision board? Mm-hmm. Have you ever written out a list of goals not not a grocery list, but a list of goals that you want to achieve. And that's a way that we can use a physical something that's in front of us to stimulate our imaginations. There's nothing wrong with using physical things out here to foster creativity. It's kind of like you think of something and you're creating it out here, but things are also coming in. It's kind of this cycle of creating, imagining, and manifesting. Einstein said famously, "Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there will ever be to know and understand." So the imagination is complete. Knowledge is never going to be complete. All right. So when we expand our imagination, we expand our possibilities because we are changing perception. Perception causes us to think differently. It's training of the mind. So we can create all kinds of scenarios in here, so many possible solutions to problems. We can envision places that we want to go to, projects that we want to create. They say if you can see it, you can be it. And there's a ton of truth to that, I think. Everything that you can see with your human eyes started out as a picture in someone's imagination. Remember Fillmore's words at the beginning, it's the imagination that the formless takes form. Our imagination can create so much more than just beautiful works of art and fiction. Our imaginations give way to experiences that create memories that create our lives. And as we recall those memories in our imaginations, they get recycled into new images that we can see whenever we remember those experiences. And it's in this beautiful cycle of imagining, as I said, and recalling. And that comes around just from being aware of your thoughts. Which ones do we want to pull out and look at? And which ones should we just shelve, forever? Or burn, I guess. Okay, I want to touch on the spiritual powers have places in the body. They have colors that correspond to them. So the part of the body assigned to the imagination, here, third eye. Anatomically, I remember when I didn't find this out this week, but I haven't known this for very long. It says, anatomically, there's a nerve center between the eyes that connects to the brain at an area near the optic nerve, which is responsible for the ability to see images in our minds. So, it's kind of like, to me, it's like if you wanted a scientific, what is the third eye? The third eye is nonsense. Well, it's not really, depends on your perception. So when we sit in prayer, when we sit in meditation, we can focus on this area, this third eye area, to help encourage the awakening of our spiritual power, to encourage the awakening of whatever it is that we're working on. And the color for it, I'm looking outside because it isn't like that today. The color of it is a light blue, and I always remember this light blue. I've said this in class, I'm sure, because I think of laying on the grass. I think of looking up at the clouds. Remember when you did that and you try to, you'd use your imagination to see what the cloud might be. So we are co-creators with God, so we always need to be communicating with the universe to discern what is ours to do. Our part in developing the spiritual faculty of imagination might include something as simple as laying in the grass and seeing an elephant. So I'm going to end today with this great quote I found. Her name is Lanisha Surf Walls. I credit her, of course, for the quote. I'm not sure who she is. But this is really great. She says, "Imagination is magical. Take a moment to watch a young child play alone, and you will experience firsthand the magic that comes from imagination. Creative thoughts turn the mundane into a magical experience. It is what turns a simple box into a powerful rocket, a laundry basket into a pirate ship, and simple bathtub into the deep blue sea. Taking a moment to view the world through a child's eyes is enough to bring back the joy and wonder that imagination brings. How amazing a world it would be if we all experienced that same joy and wonder on a day-to-day basis. She says the fact is that everybody, yes, everybody, uses their imagination in just about every moment of every day. Anybody who meditates will tell you that no matter how much you practice, you cannot turn off your thoughts. And we've established that thoughts and imagination are pretty much interchangeable. And every manifest thing originated as an idea, creative thoughts.